Prime Minister Manning, Prime Minister Thomas, Honourable Ministers, Chairman, CBC, Director General OAS, Director General, CBC, distinguished guests and participants. I'm delighted to address this opening ceremony of the Commonwealth Business Forum. Dreams never quite come true, do they? Whilst I've long toyed with the idea of a Caribbean cruise, I never quite imagined wearing a suit, not sailing even an inch, and being in the company of the Commonwealth business community, delightful though it is. I thank all of you who have journeyed here to Port of Spain, and I applaud the efforts of the CBC, the moving force behind this extraordinary forum, this platform of potential with the promise of change. Here, in this theatre, we see the sheer convening power and the tremendous reach of this Commonwealth network of ours. It was to harness that power and reach that a presentation was made to some of you over breakfast this morning, showing the business window of the proposed Commonwealth Partnership Platform portal. With heads and your support, the P3 constitutes a potential step change of connectivity in the way we do business together. This great business gathering is, of course, just one part of the Commonwealth network, which convenes in Trinidad this week. I repeat the words I used at the launch of the Commonwealth People's Forum, that is its civil society community, on Sunday evening. I spoke then of the three-legged Commonwealth stool, which brings together the public sector, the private sector, and the third sector, or civil society. Some legs may seem to be longer than others, or wobblier, but still the stool stands, and it needs three sturdy legs to do so. Chogum in Edinburgh in 1997 was the defining moment when heads of government formally recognized that the Commonwealth is, amongst other things, a very large economic and trading community of enormous potential. It was in that year that the CBC was created, and it has gone on to do significant things to stimulate trade and investment within and between our 53 nations. In other words, we are not just an alliance of governance. We have long since accepted that government cannot and should not do everything. Some things are simply too big for it, and some too small. The challenges of our society are so immense that we will rise to them best if we all shoulder our responsibility and if we do so in partnership. And if this sounds like just words and aspiration, then I point you to a new Commonwealth publication, a helpful compendium of best practices in public-private partnerships in the Commonwealth. Most PPPs are two-way, but the ones that enthuse me further are three-way, of the kind that we are starting to see, which involve partnerships of government, of business, and of civil society in delivering public goods. An Indian and Canadian environment facility set up in 1993 to bring renewable energy to rural areas is an example. My theme today, and yours these 3 days, is partnership in the pursuit of equity and sustainability, which Prime Minister Manning wants us to focus on. And well it might be, ours is a Commonwealth built on the foundations of inclusiveness, of collectiveness, of shared aspiration, concern, and responsibility. I continue here on the topic of our shared concern. At the time of the last business forum in Kampala in November 2007, the Dow Jones average had just reached its highest ever level. And the collapse of a former building society in the UK seemed like not much more than a domestic oddity, a small blip. Since then, we have seen a chastening and extraordinary 2 years for business people and policymakers alike. Many of our assumptions about how markets operate, about the balance of economic power in the world, and about what constitutes a good investment have been undermined. No less than half of our member countries are suffering negative growth. All over the Commonwealth, we see the devastation of downturn. We estimate that another 50 million of our own citizens have fallen into poverty in the last 12 months, while the neediest areas of national life, like health and education, have seen their budgets cut. There's an unseen specter hovering over this meeting, and that is pernicious, persistent poverty. And it is development, it is business, it is people like yourselves who provide the best routes out of poverty. Now we may hear the green shoots of recovery are beginning to be detected. And yes, the Dow Jones is nearly 50% higher than in March of this year. But it is not often remarked that these shoots appear to be visible in industrial and emerging economies, not in the poorer ones. So the rich man's winter cold threatens to become the poor man's chronic influenza. The changes brought about by this downturn may be recorded by indices, but they are felt by the people. And these summits are not about politics or economics. They're about people. This is not the occasion for dwelling on the causes and consequences of downturn and global crisis, but it is an opportunity to highlight some of the lessons that should inform the interaction of Commonwealth business and Commonwealth government in the light of this crisis, and to consider how they can move forward together. That is why I want to focus today on two related themes: interdependency and partnership. First, interdependency. As global integration has been fueled over the past 3 decades by the ever-increasing flow of goods, services, and capital across the world, then peoples, businesses, and countries have become ever more interdependent, as previous speakers have said. Goods and services from diverse and previously dominant regions of the world have become the currency and shorthand of globalization. After the global economic emergencies of recent times, it is easy to forget the positive and transformative impact that this process of integration has had. Whilst, as I have said, there are still far too many people in poverty, rising living standards across the world mean that there are now, in fact, 500 million fewer poor people than there were a generation ago. Business is at the heart of this achievement. No country has raised living standards without a thriving private sector. However, as trade and reconfiguration of the global division of labor have reinforced interdependency at the international level, the national ability of business to generate the employment and wealth which every country seeks is substantially dependent on the action of others. It would be easy at an event like CHOGM to think of societies as consisting of distinct segments where youth meets with youth, business with business, and politicians with politicians. But that is not the reality. Without successful businesses, the social goals of the politicians will not be met. Without healthy and well-educated workers, profitable businesses will struggle to exist. Without youth being turned from job seekers to job creators, the potential of the next generation of Commonwealth citizens will remain unrealized. Without the rule of law, supported by an efficient and honest polity, the foundations of prosperity cannot be laid.